Tēnā koutou, ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. Greetings to you all, and thank you for sticking with us while we sorted out my audio problems. But also thank you for joining from wherever you are right now, either in New Zealand or overseas, in these very unusual times. I'd like to welcome you to this special webinar event co-hosted by High Performance Sport New Zealand and Locker Room. I'm Suzanne McFadden. I'm the editor of Locker Room, which is a news site devoted solely to women in sport in New Zealand. This is a celebration of women in high performance sport. We'll be speaking to some incredible wahine toa this morning, sharing their stories on being involved in this very unique project. But before we do, I'll just run you through some general housekeeping. Again, I'm just checking that you can hear me okay. All good. Great. So this is one time when turn your cell phones off doesn't apply. But in an emergency, if you have to exit, just click out of the site with the X at the top of your screen. And if you are having any problems with your sound or vision, we suggest you just log out of this site and then come back in on the link that you originally came on. If that doesn't work, Adam's in the background and he can help you if you send him a chat message. So I think you've all discovered the chat. That's great. It's the little bubbles on the right side of your screen. Later on in our panel discussion, we'll be asking you to put any questions you may have that we will endeavour to answer during the chat. But in the meantime, go ahead and let us know that you're here, where you're from, which sport you're aligned with if you are, and why you have come to this podcast. Sorry, we're not on a podcast, we're a webinar. Good grief, it's early in the morning for me. Okay, so now I think most people have come into the room, which is fantastic to see so many of you here this morning. Thank you. And I think that we will now ask Waitamanu to perform a karakia.
Morena koutou, ko tēnei te mihi ki a tātou katoa ngā wahine tō I roto I te ao tākaro o Aotearoa. Nō reira, nau mai hara mai, tēnei tuatahi te karakia mō tātou katoa. Nō reira, pautangata, tuia kia tika. Pautangata, tuia kia pono. Kia tūturu mō ake tonu atu, o me huie tai ki e.
Kia ora wai.
Kia ora, Suzanne.
Again, welcome to you all this morning as we celebrate women in high performance sport and the launch of this unique pilot program. Sorry, project. I have been told that not to use the word program, it's a project. Later we'll chat with our panellists, Michelle Wood from Snow Sport New Zealand, Natalie Lawrence from New Zealand Football, and Sonia Boland from High Performance Sport New Zealand. And of course, I'll be talking to Waitamanu, Director of the High Performance Sport New Zealand Board, about the project. But before that, we will have a message from Sport and Recreation Minister, Grant Robertson.
Kia ora koutou katoa. It's a real pleasure to be able to help celebrate some of the milestones that have been reached as part of the Women in High Performance Sport New Zealand project, even if it is via this video message. When I became Sports Minister, I made it my #1 priority to address inequity for women and girls in sport and active recreation. There is a strong case for change, but as you know, there is also some real momentum happening in this space. Some of the initiatives underway as part of this project are contributing to that momentum. In October 2019, I announced an additional $2.7 million investment in the government strategy for women and girls in sport and active recreation. And it was for this to go towards initiatives that create opportunities to increase the representation of women in high performance leadership and coaching roles. Female athletes make a massive contribution to New Zealand's success on the international sporting stage, yet women remain significantly underrepresented in these roles. If we're serious about achieving equity for females in sport and physical activity, we need to look at how we support women to not only participate, but in coaching and leadership roles as well. As part of the project, a Women in High Performance Sport Residency Fund is already up and running. That initiative has established a cohort of highly capable women leaders and coaches through providing fixed-term residency positions within national sporting organisations. Congratulations to the 8 women who make up the inaugural resident cohort. Today's event also marks the launch of Taihapatanga, the project's Women in High Performance Sport Coaching initiative designed to foster the talent of emerging and future female high performance coaches. A big congratulations to the 12 successful candidates for that initiative. I'm excited by the opportunities this project is creating for women in high performance sport. Let's continue this momentum. Let's continue to challenge behaviours and attitudes and foster female leadership, coaching and governance, because it's something that's going to be beneficial to the future of all sport and activity.
So thank you to the Minister for that. And now we'll bring back Waimaramata Maunu, Director of High Performance Sport New Zealand.
Morena, Suzanne.
Morena. Thanks so much for coming on, Wai. It's great to see you. Now, you've got 2 hats on today, haven't you? Because you're also chair of the Women in High Performance Sport Advisory Group. So tell us why you're so passionate about this project.
I was reflecting on this this morning. This started out as a couple of lines in a High Performance Sport New Zealand set of board minutes, but enormously exciting. And fortunately, I found myself in a position where at the same time that the government was launching the Women in Sport policy, there was a part of it that was about high performance women in sport, and I was delighted to be able to have a small role in bringing together a group of incredibly passionate and talented women, and in fact a couple of men who were enormously supportive as well, to start to talk about some initiatives and a way forward to particularly redress the balance of women in leadership roles and high performance sport in particular. So I was delighted to do that. I would not normally single out people, but I do want to do so this morning. I particularly found enormous support and wisdom in the comments and participation of Professor Sarah Lieberman. She really opened my eyes to lots of things. So it wasn't just passion, there was a lot of brains involved on that group too. We then went forward, made a very astute selection in Sonia Boland as our project leader, sorry Suzanne. And so I was delighted to realistically play quite a small part, but be surrounded and supported by some fantastic women who are continuing to grow this area. But, I make no mistake. This is an area where we do need to increase the number and participation and influence of women.
Yeah. I mean, the Minister, and you pointed out the real underrepresentation of women in leadership and coaching roles within high performance sport in New Zealand. I mean,
absolutely.
The statistics are quite damning, really. Across 28 targeted sports and women in high performance sport project, there are only 4 women currently appointed in high performance director or management positions. One of those is funded through this new residency fund. And of the 114 current carded coaches, only 23% are women.
Yes, I'm well aware of those statistics. That was one of the drivers for becoming involved. My life has been enormously enriched through sport in general, but particularly high performance sport. And I was, as I say, there were women on that group that really opened my eyes to some of the barriers and some of the solutions for those barriers. And I'm delighted to see these 2 projects launched today that are aimed fairly and squarely at redressing some of those imbalances and are solution focused. So I'm delighted to be here.
So you've been involved in virtually every sector of high performance sport in your career. Silver Fern, New Zealand Netball coach, and then in governance roles. What experiences of yours have you drawn on in helping to create this project?
Look, it's been quite an interesting journey for me. And I reflected that I've been enormously lucky to have been involved in netball. Because I had these wonderful female role models, starting with Lois Muir and then with Lynn Gunson. A wonderful family background too. But in general, when I was part of the selection for the residency and then for Taihapatanga, I realised that not all women have those, and that not everyone grew up thinking that it was pretty normal for me to expect to be a high performance sport athlete, followed by potentially governance roles, followed by coaching. I was never in a situation or an environment where that seemed out of reach. And as I say, being part of the advisory group really opened my eyes to the barriers that women in other sports face. So I was firstly felt enormously lucky that I came through a sport where it's pretty standard that women expect to be high performance coaches, expect to be competing each other for those roles. And certainly the women who coached me and the women who I've coached have absolutely no expectation that they're not good enough, that there will be challenges that would stop them from achieving those roles, or there would be an environment where they would not be encouraged. And I guess in some small way, I'm really hopeful that we can extend the environment that I grew up in to more women and other sports. And I'm grateful that this project opened my eyes to the barriers that do exist, because I was not as clued up on that as I should have been.
Well, there you go. If you educate even one person through this, that's fantastic. So what to you would be success through this project? What do you want to see happen from it?
I think I'm a bit of a numbers person and a bit black and white. I'm sure most people who know me would say that. But, you know, there's some pretty standard stuff. But I would particularly like to see more women in coaching. That's my passion. At the Olympic Games, leading high-performance teams, leading high-performance athletes. Because I genuinely believe that female coaches bring something quite different, quite unique, and a nurturing, a way of coaching that is both nurturing, caring and demanding. And I think that that would benefit our athletes enormously.
So how does all of this fit in with the government's wider women and girls in sport and recreation strategy?
I see this as I think female coaches in general have a way of coaching that really inspires and encourages young people. So one, I think young women who want to aspire to be world beaters need to see women in their positions, in the role of an athlete, and then in leadership roles in governance and in coaching. I think that helps them to normalise the aspiration to be outstanding. And certainly that happened for me with people like Lois and Lynn. And secondly, I think that when it's normal, okay, encouraged that you have aspirations that take you a little bit beyond the world that you currently know, that's a good thing. And to have role models in these positions makes all of that look more achievable. I remember being 10 years old, playing netball down at Hagley Park, seeing Lee Gibbs running around. None of that ever looked as though it wasn't something I could do, sitting on the sideline with a few pies in my hand. But because they were so close and so tangible, I just thought that was something I could do. It never occurred to me that it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, you've had amazing role models right through your career.
I have.
And I'm looking at some of the names that are in here watching this webinar today and thinking, you know, that there's so many of these women who are role models who can influence others who want to go into coaching or leadership roles. And there are also women there who I could see on this program. What do you say to those women about, you know, possibly joining this project at some time in the future?
Well, I would encourage anyone who can to get involved. Certainly in the coaches that I mentor, you have to take every opportunity, because you don't know when they'll come again. You don't know what your life will be like in the future. And it's important to be there, to be in the moment, to take the opportunities, and to enjoy it. We've got some young coaches down here in Wellington who they're fabulous and they're going to be great. But you know, the main thing is that they are enjoying themselves and they are imparting knowledge and confidence and enjoyment to young women like themselves. So if they do choose that not to go further in their careers, what they will have done was imparted enormous knowledge and opportunities to make choices and particularly amongst young Māori and Pacific women, who are the ones that I am mostly involved in. And for all of those reasons, I would really encourage people to be involved. For me, it was always about helping young women to be better netballers, I guess, primarily. I don't kid myself that I made them better people. But what I do hope is that I opened their eyes to opportunities, not only in sport, but in life. And if we can all do that, then, well, I think the world's a better place.
Sure is. And there'll be lots of people out there thanking you for that. So now I think you're going to introduce the leadership residents and the coaches who've been selected for this project's first intake.
All right, well, thank you, Suzanne. It's my enormous pleasure to formally acknowledge and introduce the women who've been selected for the 2 core project initiatives. Firstly, the women in the 8 NSO Leadership and Coaching Residency Funds. Firstly, Sarah Blake, Cycling New Zealand. Kari Carswell, New Zealand Cricket. Rosie Chapman, Yachting New Zealand. Tanya Hamilton, Surf Lifesaving New Zealand. Melinda Hodgson, Basketball New Zealand. Natalie Lawrence, New Zealand Football. Elizabeth Malloy, Esther Malloy, Netball New Zealand. Michelle Wood, Snow Sports New Zealand. And most recently selected and enormously impressive, I was part of the selection group, and it was a very tough decision. So these are the Taihapatanga coaches. And again, 12 coaches selected, representing 9 sports in 8 regions around the country, and I wish them all the best. Jenny Armstrong, Yachting. Taihapatanga Bailey, Netball. Mel Bossman, Rugby Union. Lizzie Green, Equestrian. Janelle Quain, Surf Lifesaving. Whitney Hanson, Rugby Union. Gemma Lewis, Football. Kim Mickle, Athletics. Valessa Semu, Netball. Hannah Starnes, Rowing. Laura Thompson, Paracycling. And Maya Vink, Football. So
this is usually we would have a big round of applause, so feel free to clap to your screen or whistle or whatever you like to do now. Thanks again, Wai. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me here.
Moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll bring in our panelists. Can I introduce you to Michelle Wood, who is Performance Service Manager for Snow Sports New Zealand. Natalie Lawrence, who's Future Firm's Domestic Program Assistant Coach for New Zealand Football. And Sonia Boland, who is Women in High Performance Sport Project Manager. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone.
Sorry, I should have made you wave at the screen when I said your name so we know who you are. Michelle, wave to the screen. Natalie and Sonia. Thank you so much for joining us. Can I remind you in the audience that you can use the chat function now to post any questions that you'd like asked by the panel, and we'll try to get those answered for you after our discussion. Cool. So, Michelle, you get to start off first. Congratulations on your new role. What does this residency program mean to you?
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, well, firstly, I'm really grateful to be part of the project. I can see already the impact that it's having on the individuals in the program and I guess in the system, you know, as a wider view through that improved visibility that we're trying to get. What it means to me in terms of this residency program, I think it's changed for me over the last 6 or 7 months. And we talked about this a bit earlier, but my kind of thinking coming in when I heard about, you know, creating roles for women, the really proud competitive side of me thought, gosh, I don't need to, you know, have a role created for me, and I can compete fair and square with men and you know, get a role in my own right. And I just wasn't quite on board with it, and I didn't see why we needed to do it. What I've found, I guess, over the past 6 or 8 months and being part of this program and talking to a lot of people about it, is that we really needed to make this, I don't want to say drastic, maybe purposeful is a better word, but a really purposeful decision and a strategic move to do this in order to create that change and have that change, you know, quicker, I guess, than if we hadn't have done this. So I can certainly see now why we needed to do this. My hope is, and I've talked to Sonia about this, you might want to jump into Sonia, but my hope is that, you know, in a few years' time, we don't need to create roles for women, is that we can put the resource into supporting the women that are already in the system and, you know, supporting and developing them so that they are ready and confident and able to step up and apply for those leadership and coaching roles when they come up. And, you know, you look around now, we've got some incredible women in the system. So, you know, a lot in leadership roles already, some on a pathway to leadership roles, and also in the coaching space as well. So that's certainly my hope for the future, is that we can kind of spread that resource across that group as well and really help them to step up.
You're one of those talented women too. I mean, you've had such an interesting career in sport. You were a national junior hurdles champion. You represented New Zealand in cycling, and then spent almost 10 years working at Athletics New Zealand. So how did this opportunity come about for you?
So this opportunity with snow sports, you know, it wasn't something I was necessarily looking to get into, to be honest. I was, you know, super happy at Athletics New Zealand and had been there for 10 years and worked with a really great team of people and in a challenging role. And I was just starting to think, though, maybe after 10 years I might, you know, have a look around after Tokyo and see what else is out there for me. And for me, part of it was spreading my wings and stepping outside my comfort zone and my comfort zone of athletics. And this role came up, and I saw it, and it just really excited me. And I thought, gosh, if I'm going to leave, I think this is the role I'd do it for. So so kind of started down looking into it and chatting with Nick, the HPD, and others about the role, and decided to go for it.
So are you a skier or a snowboarder?
I'm not. I can get down the mountain, but I've got some lessons booked in with one of my colleagues for when I can get down to Wanaka. But that was part of the exciting thing for me, is that as snow sports, it's a new sport for me, so it's certainly not my background. And I knew that I could provide value to the program, you know, based on my experience with athletics, and I was really keen to do that. But as well as providing that value, it was you know, a challenge and it's a growth opportunity for me too. Yeah.
So obviously skills transfer over quite easily between sports. Yeah. So tell us what does your role entail? What do you do? And is it right through to the 2022 Beijing Olympics?
Yeah. So through to 2022 at this stage, and it's the main part of the role is the performance services leadership. So working with the performance services staff. So we've got the sports science and sports medicine providers that are employed and contracted by HBSNZ, and then we've also got some snow sports specific staff that I look after as well. So the main part of the role is leading them and, you know, making sure they have that role clarity, that they need to have impact on our key campaigns. And there's other parts of the program that I'm getting involved in as well. It's a new role, so it's still evolving and kind of seeing where else I can add value.
Yeah, it's very cool. So how have you found the residency program so far? What does that involve?
Yeah, it's been fantastic so far. I mean, we've had the challenge of COVID and not being able to meet up as a group, which has been tough, but we have had some really good online sessions, more so with the leadership group. So there's been 5 of us, there's 6 now, you know, in that leadership cohort. So it's actually been really cool to get to know the women in that a little bit better. I knew most of them beforehand, but certainly got to know them a lot better. And it's just been a really good group so far to share experiences with and what we're going through and help each other out. It feels like a really safe environment to have some challenging conversations and like I said, just to help each other out with what we're going through. And for me, the other big thing's been the access to the PD funding. So I'm working with a coach and a coach for me based in Wanaka, and that's been really helpful for me. And it's just someone, I guess, independent as well to help me through the challenges of starting a new role and working remotely and working with that. So that's been really, really awesome.
And Tammy, in your career so far, what have been the main barriers that you've seen for women to access and succeed in high performance leadership roles?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could spend a lot of time on this. So I might just pick one that I think is quite prominent, and I'm quite passionate about addressing it. And I think that's the time commitment involved in leadership roles. And we all work in sport. Everyone works really hard, and often you see a full-time role advertised, and often it is more than full-time. And I think that, I guess, the expectation that comes with leadership roles and that scrutiny and the time commitment, I think it puts a lot of women off. And I think, especially those that have families, I think it is really tough to leap in and apply for a full-time role. So I would say, I mean, that's been a big, well, it hasn't been a barrier for me because I have worked around it. I've made the roles that I've been in work for me, and I think that's kind of my big point I want to make, is that we need to almost reframe our mental models about what leadership roles look like, and think outside the square a bit. And there's people, I mean, Nick Kavanagh, who is our HPD at Snow Sports, he thought outside the square when he came back to me and offered me the role, and was thinking about other ways that could make it work. Same with the guys at Athletics New Zealand, Scott Goodman and Scott Newman have been fantastic, and working around me and my family and what works for me. So I think that's really important, and I think, perhaps not everyone's had that. So we've definitely got some room for improvement in that space.
Very good. Well, thank you. We're going to move on to Natalie now. Congratulations on your new role, or is it new roles plural?
Yeah, it's a pretty big job title, but yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, fantastic. So you're originally from England.
Yes.
But you've also coached in Vancouver. So
Correct.
How did you end up here?
It's quite like a long story that I won't bore you with all the details of, but today is quite a special day for me because today actually represents 10 years since I first left the UK. So it's all worked out quite well with the dates. So well done for that. I think when I first got here, I managed to get myself like a lot of opportunities to work within sport, especially football, and I was really lucky to create a lot of good relationships with some of the good females within the game. I kind of got to a point where I really realised that I wanted to be more involved in coaching, as I was doing coaching and development. And there was a massive opportunity for me to move to Canada. And kind of as I went to Canada, it was as a development part of my life. It was really invaluable. The players I was working with were some kind of top youth international players that have gone on to have really good careers, and being in that kind of full-time coaching environment was an amazing opportunity for me. But New Zealand was always kind of in the back of my mind, kind of still in my heart as where I wanted to go. So I kept coming back here. I did my coaching courses through New Zealand. I kept in contact with people in New Zealand, and there was a moment in Canada where I was like, I feel like I have achieved what I needed to, and now it's time to bring my experiences and my development back to New Zealand. And I was given a pretty amazing and unique opportunity to work in boys and men's football with Team Wellington Youth. And if I look at New Zealand as a country and how Capital Football, New Zealand Football Team Wellington kind of gave me that opportunity to come back to the country and even work in something a little bit different that no female coach had done before, was, kind of the stars kind of aligned a little bit for me, I think.
Well, we're really lucky to have you. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you for giving me permanent residency.
Brilliant. So in your own experience, have you found how have you found opportunities for women here, is what I'm trying to say, compared to elsewhere? But how do we compare looking after women?
I think that, there's initiatives like this, which I'm not sure how many of them across the world, that is not only one, giving an opportunity for females to really develop and grow in their chosen field, but having the government backing to then remove barriers is huge. And I look at my experiences in other countries, and even if I bring it back to that opportunity I had with Team Wellington Youth, I'm not sure that I would have got that opportunity within other countries, even though I probably had the experience and the qualifications in order to do so. So, I feel really proud of New Zealand as a country, and me being able to be part of this residency fund, but also kind of represent New Zealand as a bit of a second home to me, and the opportunities that it's given me. I don't think I would have got those in other countries. So it just shows how ahead of the game some aspects of the country and the sport is.
It's good to hear that we are, in some respects, ahead of the game. So you've already been a pioneer for women's football in New Zealand for coaching, and you've got a great deal of experience under your belt already. Why is this initiative important to you?
I think the initiative, what it's kind of done in the short term, is really remove a couple of barriers that may be in the way to be able to be full-time in football. I think that the kind of job that I'm in now, and the ability to develop some of the players that I can within the game is huge. And it's a bit of a dream role to be able to be, again, full-time coaching on the grass and developing these players. But I also think from another aspect, it's given me a huge opportunity to get in the building and to be kind of have a voice and be able to drive change from within. That's something that I really feel passionate about, is being able to ensure that there's more jobs and there's more opportunities and there's more visibility for female coaches, especially in a really, really male-dominated sport that's globally male-dominated as well, but where the visibility of the women is getting higher and higher, but we still got a long way to go. So that opportunity to drive that from within an organisation that is obviously supporting me as a female, but as you would have seen, there's two other females on the Taihapatanga initiative as well. So that's three of us now that are going to be given some really good development and skills to be able to hopefully encourage more opportunities and jobs and stuff for females coming through in all sports.
Yeah, it's really great. So what are your aspirations with coaching now? Would you like to be the football firm's head coach, or is it more about mentoring coaches? What do you want to do?
Yeah, well, I know Tom Samani's on here, so I don't want to try and get him out of a job.
One day.
maybe. I think, if I look at football, we've just got this amazing event now with 2023, a home World Cup. And I think it would be silly and naive of me to say that I don't want to have a massive part of being part of that staff. This kind of, again, being in the building and being with those players and having conversations with people like Tom, hopefully I'll earn that right to eventually be part of that staff. So while I have huge ambitions within my coaching, I do, again, have huge ambitions to kind of help change the picture of what a high-performance coach looks like, and help kind of normalise females within high-performance coaching roles, increase visibility, to help maybe remove that kind of unconscious bias that's so prominent in sports organisations and teams. So I think that's probably two kind of big hairy ambitions that I have. Tom, if you're listening, I'm keen.
This is the perfect opportunity to put that out there.
Yes,
That's great. So what would you say to other women looking to become high performance coaches?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a 15-year journey for me that's included 4 countries. So I'm not going to say that it's easy, and I've probably sacrificed a lot, as everyone in this room probably has in some shape or form. I think for me, if I look at my experiences, it may sound really cliche, but kind of being comfortable, like be comfortable being uncomfortable. Like, you are going to be the only female on a coaching course. You are going to be the only female in a room fighting for your sport and for you to have a voice. And like, that's okay. And hopefully that's not going to be forever. I kind of want to echo what I was saying earlier on, is female mentors and role models for me have been huge. There have been people that have been really high up and prominent in the sport, as coaches and players, but also as leaders. And I think that's something that I've really developed from. And again, something that Y said was seize every opportunity. I think as females, we have a tendency to either not apply for something or not put ourselves out there because we may not tick every single box. But if you feel ready and you are given an opportunity and you within yourself feel confident, then go for it and just back yourself. And it's our job as females to celebrate, support each other, and really shout from the rooftops on how successful we all are.
That's brilliant advice, and totally believing in ourselves, backing ourselves, but then also surrounding ourselves with women who can support us, I think.
Yeah.
Women and men who can support us.
Yes, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks, Natalie. Okay, Sonia, you're up. Your turn.
Hello.
Hello. So, people probably don't know this. You're originally from Canberra.
I am.
How did you end up in New Zealand?
Yeah, the journey to New Zealand's been an interesting one. So also, I don't come from a sports background, which makes everything that I have done over the last 18 months such an enriching experience for me. So we moved to New Zealand for a job for my husband, who also works in high performance sport. Found ourselves in the little town of Cambridge and pondering to myself, what do I do now that I'm here? I formerly worked in global health policy, and there wasn't a lot of that work going around in the dairy town that is Cambridge. And yeah, so during that time, this job opportunity came up, and I saw it, and I thought to myself, how can I not put my name forward for this? You know, sport has always had such an important part of my life. It's a really important part of my family's life, my children's life. I really do think it has the power to do a lot of good in the community. And I think particularly where there is opportunity to have role models and visibility of promoting really good behaviours that you want to see replicated in your society, sport is an avenue to achieve that. So tying that in with then having a chance to bring women through and create opportunity and space for them to thrive in a high performance setting. Yeah, it just felt like something I really had to be part of.
Excellent. Glad you did. So what would you like to see it achieve?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's really important to be realistic about what can be achieved in the time frame of the project and the investment period we have at the moment. Things like, you know, hearing Nat and Michelle talk about their experiences, even personally, how things have shifted for them in their own lives in the last, 6 to 8 months, creating the chance for them to be embedded and, as Nat said, get into the building and start influencing and having conversations and being visible and present into a high performance setting is fantastic. For me, the really important part is then how do we retain it? So we're making this investment, and I really like the way Michelle said purposeful, so that we're trying to accelerate that change in the system. How do we then retain that, and how do we keep these talented women connected, engaged, and wanting to stay part of the program? So for me, a really important piece is looking at some of the systemic shifts that need to change and what we can do to lay the foundations in these early times so that as the investment may shift or sports start taking their own journeys around looking at diversity inclusion, even beyond gender, that the foundations in their programs within their organisations are there, and it provides a setting in which diversity and inclusion can thrive, I would say.
So let's talk more about Taihapatanga, which is, I think, a fantastic initiative. What drawing up this unique project, what did it involve?
Yeah, I'm so excited about this project, in part because it's been a really long time in the making in terms of my tenure in the organisation. I'm really excited about it because it has also drawn on the enormous amount of expertise that we have within high performance sport as an organisation. Lynn Gunson's name's already been mentioned a few times, but she's been a really driving force around how this has been shaped and how it will be delivered and implemented into the coaching cohort. So for me, it's really exciting that we've been able to draw on the expertise and experience we have within, create an initiative that is going to address multiple barriers or challenges that female coaches can experience in trying to, forge a pathway into high performance sport. And also, really importantly, thinking not just about the short term, but how an initiative and investment like this can be integrated into the future of high performance coach development in the country. Yeah. So we know that from coaching experiences, and Natalie touched on some of these to start with, that simple things about getting enough time on the pitch, so to speak, to coach, to really be able to be full-time or devote themselves to develop as a coach is really critical. And they're some of the really fundamental barriers that are making it difficult for women to get into those coaching roles and then compete for them when jobs become available. So what we've done is in the program really look to say, or the initiative I should say, is how can we make really targeted investments to provide opportunities for women to really just focus on coaching. So the initiative has a scholarship attached to it, a $15,000 scholarship per coach, and that's really designed for the coach and their sporting organisation to say, what can we do to give us the best chance of giving you as much coaching opportunity as possible? So face-to-face time with your athletes. Sitting alongside that is a structured residential program that will bring the cohort of coaches together, learn from each other, develop the skills required to to manage what is a really complex role in a high performance setting, in a high stressful setting quite often. So, the scholarship running alongside a targeted development education period program. But the other piece around that, which I think is so critical and so exciting, is the coaches will also then be working with what we've termed practice mentors. So females who are experienced in the high performance system in New Zealand, who have achieved results, are going to come in and then provide their expertise and support to that up and emerging community of coaches. So we're really looking at trying to set up a strong community of practice for that emerging and future cohort, connecting in with the women who are already in the system, really to provide some sustainability of support networks and the ability for everyone to learn and cross-collaborate across different codes.
I think that's huge, especially the cross-code collaboration. I mean, like Michelle is already experiencing, taking what you learn in one sport and applying it to another is fantastic. Now, we just had a question come up, which I'll ask you now, Sonia, from Moana Leilua. Hi, Moana. She wants to know, what is the meaning of Taihapatanga?
Oh, I should have written this down because I'm going to get it wrong. I know I will.
I wrote it down if it's any help to you.
Yes, it will, because I'm still, this is an area that I'm learning and growing in myself. So, yes, Suzanne, can you read it out? Have you got it there?
Yes, it means to lift, elevate, and empower.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you for that.
That's a really great word to use for this project, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think, this is, I think going to the point that Michelle was making, and we've talked about before, Suzanne, this is really about enabling and empowering. It's not just investing in a way that women feel like they're being a handout. You know, the women in the system, people like Natalie and Michelle, want to earn it. They want credibility in the system. They have the capability, the experience and the knowledge. So this is really about then lifting and empowering so that they can go on and thrive and succeed.
How did you find the coach mentors? Was that hard to find people to do it?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. And I really need to give credit here. Lynn Gunson has been absolutely the driving force behind that. She's got so much experience in the system, both personally as a coach and also working with coaches. What was really interesting is when that list was coming together of the experienced coaches, I think it's fair to say, and it's not surprising, that the numbers of who we could draw on, you know, it's not like we had 50 coaches to pick from in the sense, you know, the number of women who not only have come through the ranks but have stayed in the system and been able to be retained. There's not a huge amount there, but what we do have there is an amazing pool of experience working across different sports. You know, not surprising, netball coaches are in there, but they've got so much to offer and so much to give, as do the other coaches across the areas of athletics, equestrian. I know there are others that I haven't captured, but you know, we also have looked at it and said, really interestingly, why I made the point before that the coaches in that cohort are spread across the country. And so what we've also looked at is the regional settings in which they are and trying to pair them with coaches who are in the same region so they can actually have continued engagement and opportunities to work together where distance isn't a barrier to those opportunities. So
what's been the response to the project so far? I mean, it's quite new, but from the participants, the people who applied, the NSOs, what feedback are you getting?
Yeah, so I've been reflecting on this a lot in the last 3 or 4 days. When I first came into the role, being new both to New Zealand and to sport, I thought it was really important to go out and speak to the different NSOs that would have the potential to be connected into the project in a different way. And I wanted to sit down with them and understand what an investment like this would mean for them from a high performance program perspective, to get a bit of a sense of what their knowledge was of I guess, the talent pool, particularly of coaches coming through and potential future leadership talent. And the conversations were really enlightening. And I walked away thinking that there are some sports that have really been thinking about this and have a plan and a strategy on what they want to do to address what is the significant underrepresentation, both in coaching and in what I'd say senior leadership in high performance. There were some sports that knew they had to do something, but didn't quite know how and what that could look like. And then there were others that I think, to be fair, it wasn't really on their radar. And in part because in terms of capacity and capability, you know, they were already trying to do a lot on a very low budget, and it just wasn't in their view. Fast forward 12 months, and if you look at the applications that we received for Taihapatanga, we received over 42 applications from female coaches. 25 different sports were represented in that group. Within that, some of those sports that told me 12 months ago, oh, I don't really know if we've got females wanting to put their hands up, were represented in those numbers. So for me, that says that in 12 months, the conversations are starting within the sports. Women are starting to see opportunities emerge. And I think it's really important to keep in context, this investment in high performance sport is not being done in isolation. It's not being done in a vacuum. Sport New Zealand is also making a huge amount of investment through their women and girls strategy. But you also have other pieces of work happening within sporting organisations who are running their own women's coaching programs, who are looking to invest targeting within their areas. You know, the regional sporting trusts are also doing the same thing. So all of this is moving momentum in the right direction. So
you are seeing a shift, which is great.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and sometimes it's a bit like 2 steps forwards, 1 step back in some of the conversations, but I think for me, it's really important to stay focused on, there is a change, and it is going to take a while, and the systemic challenges run deep, and it's going to take a really long time to shift some aspects of it. But the more we can do around this investment, the more people we have, like Natalie and Michelle, talking about their experiences, bringing their voices to the table, the more we can try and accelerate that change forward.
So there are other focuses of this project out there. What is there beyond these two initiatives that you're working on?
Yeah, so it really talks to, I guess, that piece I was just touching on, the systemic component. So we recognise that investing in positions such as those in the Residency Fund or providing additional coach opportunities, it's not going to mean anything if the environment in which people are working and operating doesn't change. And, to Michelle's point, which I think is a really important one, and also Natalie, you need to think differently. There needs to be a way of thinking differently about what it looks like to be a leader in high performance sport, what it looks like to lead and be a head coach of a national program, both in terms of behavioural characteristics and also how you do your job. So dare I say it, COVID has really thrown the world a curveball in which people are learning to do, or people are doing their jobs in a way that has never really been explored before because we've never been forced into that. But what we're learning is that, during lockdown, there is an ability to stay connected with your athletes as a coach and not necessarily have one-on-one FaceTime with them all the time. Now, I'm not saying that's what you want to do ideally going forward, but it's just been really interesting to think about, even in this 6 months, how have we shifted our perceptions about how to do a job, the trust that you can have in people to do a job slightly differently, and also to bring opportunities forward that allow people to have flexibility in how they go about their work. And a really important part, I think, is also recognising that any change that we make to the system that's going to benefit women and attract a diverse representation across the board is going to benefit those who are already in the system. So, any change we make that is going to support women coming through is also going to support the men who are there, because I'm pretty sure they don't enjoy missing out on their family time either. So it's really about saying, let's start thinking differently. And to do that, it's about working with the organisations to say, where are they at the moment? How are they considering what not just diversity means in their ranks, but what inclusion means, and really talking about what does an inclusive environment look like and what does that look like in a high performance context. It's a really challenging piece of the project. And for me, I think, again, being realistic, it's about setting the foundations and having conversations with them about really simple things. How do they go about recruitment? What does that process look like? And are they really thinking about how they can access as much talent in the system as possible? If you look at the numbers at the moment, it's fair to say that, there's 50% of the population in New Zealand that isn't being tapped in terms of potential to take on coaching and leadership roles, because for a number of different reasons, just the simple way that recruitment is done and the unconscious bias that sits within that is, that's the first hurdle to get past.
Well, congratulations, because you have thought outside the box and you are making a difference already. So I'm sure we're all grateful for that. So we've got time for some questions now, and I'm going to start with one for Natalie. You've got a lot of experience in different environments and have focused heavily on development. Does this give you an advantage in challenging the status quo and creating a high-performance environment in football in New Zealand?
Yeah, good question. I think in a way it does. I think if I look at some of the environments I've been in, the biggest advantage is some of the coaches and players I've worked with and some of the contacts now that I have globally. But also each environment has been so different that it's enabled me to kind of grab the best parts from each and really kind of challenge myself and others in thinking. One other thing that has probably happened over the last 12 months or so as well is using this kind of experience and that I have in different countries and different environments, but also looking at the research of best practice as well. And football can be a very opinion-based game, as I'm sure a lot of other sports can, but it's challenging us within our programme on how we can remove opinions and actually look at the research, look at best practice to help drive our decisions to keep us really accountable.
Fantastic. Now, Sarah Beeman, who did the fantastic Women in Cricket research, says the research identified the importance for women to step on and off sports pathways as life commitments change. How do we create a high-performance structure and systems that allow for this flexibility while ultimately retaining talented women in the long term? We'd like to answer that. Sonia?
I was going to say I can have a start, but I feel like I'd love to hear from someone like Michelle's experience in terms of what this has meant for her. Fantastic question, and interestingly, one of the areas that I had a look at when I took on this role is also some of the work happening in the STEM field. I think it's always important to look outside the field in which we're working to see if we can learn from other experiences. And one of the things that came away from some of the research I did in that area was around moving away from recruiting people based on quality and not quantity. So what I mean by that is, if you take an example of a male in the system who's been coaching, continues to have, long time on the field coaching, year on year, as that grows, they're able to step up into new and challenging roles. In a female's case, they come into the system, they coach, and then they may leave to have a family, and then they come back in, and perhaps when they come back in, they're only able to commit part-time, and then they may leave again and then come back in. If we only recruit based on the amount of coaching they have done, we miss out on everything to do with the quality in which people bring to it. So there needs to be a shift in saying the quality in which that coach has, the skill set that they provide, we need to be looking at that, not just the number of hours that they have coached. So it's a really difficult thing to do, but I guess that's one of the thinkings that I think, again, it's about shifting. How do we value? And also saying, for someone who has had, I was reflecting this morning, trying to get ready today, and I'm negotiating with my 7-year-old on if a teddy bear should go to school or not. Communication skills, negotiation skills, they're right there. Having empathy in how you do that all translates back into a work context, whether it's leadership or coaching. And so it's just thinking, again, shifting the societal concepts around what makes a strong candidate. But Michelle, what's your experience on that from a personal perspective?
Well, I think you've nailed it, Sonia. It's that kind of reframing what we think about what a coach needs to do and what a leader needs to do, and I guess as women, I think, and men, just being comfortable to come forward and say, well, this is what works for me, and setting up the role as it's going to work for you and your life and the commitments you have. I think that's really important, and I think we mentioned it before, but talking about, especially about flexible working environments now, and it's certainly more accepted, that we do work differently and work remotely, but as well, as encouraging it for women, I think we need to make it more acceptable for men. I think we're definitely heading in the right direction, but looking at especially women in leadership positions, I think we're more likely to accept those leadership roles if we know that things aren't going to suffer at home, and that it's my husband and I, we operate very much as a team, and we need those flexible environments for men as well to make things work.
Absolutely. And the big question, of course, is, did the teddy bear go to school today?
It didn't.
Good negotiating. Now we have a question here from Grace O'Hanlon, who's Black Sticks goalkeeper. She wants to know, to the side of the issue that's really addressed, more women in high performance roles inherently means less men in high performance roles. Given the current trend in New Zealand sport of the boys club hiring the boys club, how is the project addressing the NSO side of the process?
Guessing that one's for me again.
I think this one for you.
Yeah, well, I feel like I touched on that a little bit in terms of that systemic piece, and again, going back to some of the conversations I'm having across the sports at the moment, you can see there is some hesitation around saying, if we're opening the door up for more women, it will mean that there might be less available for men. Some people, I think, are coming to terms with that. But I do also think there are a lot of men in the system who are saying, it's time, we need to start making a difference and we need to start getting people through. So going back to some of those really fundamental things about how recruitment is done, how people are moved into roles, how they are promoted, the transparency and accountability around that, that needs to change and it needs to shift. And a little bit is around having sporting organisations that have the capability to actually understand what a really strong and robust recruitment process looks like. The high performance sports sector in New Zealand is still relatively young. It's emerging and it's evolving, and in some cases organisations have grown at a rate where their capability in terms of the skill set they have in there may not be meeting the demand that it now requires. So going in and working through really fundamental things around how do you identify women, not just women, but how do you identify people in the system that you want to mentor and support through where they see they've got potential, but what are the biases around who you're shoulder tapping, and how can we start addressing some of those unconscious biases, and also building in some proper robust accountability measures on how they recruit. I think that's, for me, until you can start changing who you hire and who you recruit, you're not going to see a shift.
Anyone else want to comment on that one? No? Okay, another one for you, Sonia. Hold on, now I've lost it off my screen. Won't be a moment. Steve Gladding asks, will there be another cohort of Taihapatanga?
I hope so. That I don't have a crystal ball to see how the funding will go beyond our investment period. What we have certainly done is tried to design an initiative that has longevity, both in terms of what we're able to do with this cohort and then the potential to have a really strong evaluation mechanism running through the whole thing to build a business case to do it again. So that is absolutely, from my perspective, yes. Whether the dollars run that way, who can predict, particularly in the current fiscal climate that we're all working within. But certainly it's fair to say that what we have done at every step of the way is to set up an initiative that has the best chance of being run again. It may look a little bit different, but things should, because we should be evaluating and adjusting and tinkering where we need to, but fingers crossed.
Now we have a question for, I think either Natalie or Michelle could answer this, from Maya Lewis. Quite often there are jobs in the sports sector that I may be interested in, but often they are either part-time or contract work, so not realistic to live off, which reduces the type of people that can apply. I do find this a bit frustrating. Does anyone else have the same issues?
Maybe if I start, I think especially when I first moved to New Zealand, I was probably doing 3 or 4 different roles where I was able to coach, but to live, I was also having to do some part-time admin work. And it probably wasn't until kind of 2012 I managed to get my first full-time job in football, working as the Women's Development Officer at Capital Football. And that was 2 years probably of being involved in programs, kind of shouting at them like, look at me, I want to work here, plus some investment from New Zealand football in the women's development space. So I think that whilst it's hard and it's not ideal, if there is opportunities for you to get your foot in the door and show your worth, even if it's at a part-time basis, there's going to be jobs come up and there's going to be roles, and it's if you get yourself involved in good environments, then people will look after you and ensure that when full-time full-time jobs come up, that you're the person that they see and they think of and is in the forefront of their mind. So whilst it's not the ideal, it is one of the options on being able to kind of get your foot in the door and get yourself seen and known and heard.
Absolutely. Shell?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nat covers it well. I think it is tough in sport, and I guess my advice is just grab every opportunity you can. You know, I know a lot of leaders and coaches who have volunteered along the way to get that additional experience, just to kind of help them pick up for those roles. So it certainly is tough, but there's definitely opportunities out there. It's kind of just grabbing them when you can, really.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think that it may be time to wrap this up. Thank you again to our panelists. You've been fantastic. And thank you so much for everybody at home or in the office or wherever you are joining us from today. I hope you've found great value from our guests. And once again, congratulations on this amazing project, Sonia, that you're leading. And until the next Locker Room High Performance Sport New Zealand webinar, mā te wā.